Well, hello, everybody. My name is James Pace. I have just started a new little company here, Fudged Publishing. It's about fudge-based RPGs, and to that end, I'm going to be starting a video series talking to various fudge gurus and fudge fanatics and fudge fans. And in fact, I have a couple of them here with me today. So we're just going to have a little roundtable discussion talking about all things fudge. And I'm going to go ahead and introduce them in order of my camera view here. So first we have Jacob Wood. So Jacob, go ahead and introduce yourself and give a quick little background.
Sure. I'm Jacob Wood. I have a company called Accessible Games. That's at accessiblegames.biz. And I've been working with Fudge for pardon me, a couple of years now. Recently, as of last year, earlier this year, published my first Fudge-based game called Psi-Punk. It's a cyberpunk and psionics all wrapped into one system. And I'm about to release yet another Fudge game called Monster Kart Mayhem, which is sort of a Mario Kart meets Wacky Racers sort of game. So I've got a lot of different things going on with Fudge right now.
Awesome. And to his right on my video screen is Wolf Bergenheim. He is one of the first people I met when I was introduced to the world of Fudge. I call him my Fudge guru, and I'll let him do his intro. Here he is.
Hey, I'm Wolf. I don't have a company or anything like that. I'm characterizing myself as a Fudge GM, and typical of a Fudge GM, I tweak the system a lot because that's the way it is. And yeah, I've made some custom stuff. I currently am running only Fudge for all my games. I run a few online games, and then I'm also running a face-to-face Fudge game.
Awesome. I will be doing some extra plugs because I know you've got a version of Mouse Guard that I've actually been able to play, which is awesome. So I will be hitting all those too. So what I'm going to do is just kind of kick it off with just a quick overview of Fudge. I'm going to turn this off, the camera. So if you guys want to jump in at any point, what I was going to do is just kind of go over the basics of Fudge really quickly, as I understand it, which, you know, I still have a long ways to go, but basically what I like about Fudge is a few things. The adjective ladder, for one, I find really helpful, especially for new players. The adjective ladder assigns a word to different levels in Fudge. Fudge ranges from a -4, which is at the lowest, to a +4, which is the highest, and it uses a bell curve, 4 dice, the funny dice that you see with the pluses and minuses on them. And so that's one thing I really like, is the fact that it's a bell curve, the fact that it uses the adjective ladder, and I like the attributes, and it also uses skills. It's basically a roll plus skill, and the other thing I really like about Fudge is that it uses the margin of success versus just a binary pass-fail type system. And I really like that it's very adaptable. You can do it for any kind of genre, from fantasy to sci-fi, everything in between. So that's basically the two things that for me really kind of really brought it in to me as a game I really wanted to explore. So I'm going to be providing links. They might actually pop up when I put this in post, of some examples, things like that, of how the Fudge dice work. But what I really want to talk about mostly is kind of get different perspectives. So I've got a series of questions here, and we're just going to start with Jacob. So the first question I have for you guys is, how did you discover Fudge?
I kind of discovered Fudge backwards through fate. My wife was a big fan of the Dresden Files TV show, so I started looking up Dresden Files. Found out that at the time Evil Hat was working on a Dresden Files game using an engine called Fate, and I sort of followed that backwards to find Fudge. And what drew me in initially was the trait ladder, so that really stood out to me. And I started reading through the Fudge SRD, and I just fell in love with it overnight. Literally, I was up till like 7 a.m. Reading through the entire document. And I kind of got into it because I wanted to run a game and decided that I needed to put together all the little pieces of the Fudge puzzle, as it were. And by the time I had all of the parts of Fudge that I wanted to use, I figured I might as well add another 30 pages and make it a book.
How about you, Wolf? How did you first discover Fudge?
By accident, really. So I was running. So I used to run with my own homegrown or homebrew system, which had nothing to do with Fudge. I hadn't even heard of Fudge. So my background is in games like Rollmaster, Middle-earth role-playing, and so on. And so I was running this my own system at a convention, and they had this thing called a GM loot, which allowed you to get some free, merchandise, RPG merchandise for running games. And then at this loot, I had been running quite a few games, and the more games you ran, the higher up in the loot hierarchy you got. And I was pretty up in the top. And they had a copy of the Fudge, the Blue Book. So I grabbed that without knowing. It just said Fudge RPG, do it yourself, which sort of drew me into it. So I picked it up and had no idea what it was. One of my friends told me, "Oh, that's cool. That's really cool." And he had a voucher for one of the local game stores, and he said, "Okay, I'm going to give you this with the condition that you buy Fudge dice with it, so we can play Fudge." And I started reading the Fudge rulebook, and like Jacob, fell instantly in love. I think I also read it basically almost overnight, and I was just blown away by how simple it was, yet how sort of flexible it was at the same time. And that sort of really drew me into more sort of lightweight gaming, or rules-light gaming, and I really instantly fell in love with the system, and yeah, that got me hooked.
My way was, the way I got into it was kind of by accident too, because for a long time I had been running two 3.5 D&D games. I was running a face-to-face group and an online group. My face-to-face group lasted almost 4 years, one campaign. The online campaign lasted almost 2 years. But at the end of it, I was really getting kind of burnt out on standard fantasy. I've been a sword and sorcery fan pretty much since I was a little kid. Reading a lot of the Lovecraft and Howard and all that stuff, the standard stuff. And then I got into the Conan comics pretty hardcore when I was a kid, and the stories and everything. And so D&D just was not scratching that itch. And then I discovered Mongoose had put out a D20 Conan the Barbarian game. Mm-hmm. And I was yay happy, and I went and bought it, and I started trying to play with it, and suddenly realized it was a lot like 3.5 in the sense that it was just very tedious. There was a lot of stats, there was a lot of mechanics, and it just felt by the time you get to 6th or 7th level, being as a GM, it just got to be kind of a pain in the butt for me. And aside from that, I was using a program called DM Genie, which basically automated, D3.5, and I was hoping to script and convert DM Genie to work with Conan, but I couldn't make the parry and certain types of rules that used a PowerPoint system like Psionics, but it was different. So I started doing some research online, and I actually posed a question, I think it was on RPGNet, about just light systems, easy to use, very flexible. Someone told me about Fudge. I downloaded the PDF, which is it's got a lot of information, but it's not a very exciting read. So that's when I found the Fudge IRC channel, and that's where I met Jonathan and Philippe and Wolf and Nate, and those are kind of the core guys that I initially met online. And then, of course, I had to pick up the 10th anniversary edition, the hardcover, and I started making a Conan clone. It was a clone of Mongoose's game. But then we started playing it online. A few people actually said, hey, this is kind of a fun game. You should actually make a game of this. And I said, well, I don't want to clone somebody else's work. So then I destroyed that game, or I didn't really destroy it. I just sort of put it in a folder in my hard drive. And I started from scratch. And that's where Blood, Sweat, and Steel kind of came from. Several iterations later, and 5 years later, I'm almost ready to release it. So that's how I basically came to find it, and because of a lot of the things that you guys mentioned, the trait ladder, the bell curve, you know, the randomness of D20 in some percentile games, to me, I like knowing that my great swordsman has a pretty good advantage over a fair swordsman. And if I'm the fair swordsman and I'm going up against a great swordsman, I know I need to find ways to find advantages, and to me it makes the game feel a little more believable, and especially with the type of genre that I like, which is the sword sorcery genre, it really seems to suit that well. So my next question is what was the first Fudge game you played? So we'll start with Jacob.
So oddly enough, the first Fudge game I played was Psi-Punk. I had tried to get a game of Marvelous Superheroes going by Eddie Webb, and by the time I managed to get a group together, Psi-Punk was in a more or less playable state, so I was ready to kind of alpha test that, and ran my own first game, I guess. So unfortunately, I didn't have the experience of like playing a lot of different Fudge games beforehand, but I really hope to get in more of them now that I've kind of gotten more into the community.
Awesome. Cool. How about you, Wolf?
For me, that's a hard question. I think it was my own Fudged Mouse Guard, which I ran at the same con the next year after I picked up Fudge. I actually ran the same, so I had picked up Mouse Guard, and the rules did not sit right with me. I just could not wrap my head around the rules. Well, I could mechanically, but they just didn't. It didn't go for the feel I wanted from the game, and I was a huge Mouse Guard comic fan. So I also found a Savage Mouse Guard version also online. So at that convention I ran the same Mouse Guard adventure with Fudge, with the Savage Wolves rules, and then the genuine Mouse Guard rules. Cool. And of those three, I found that Mouse Guard is definitely the way to. The Fudge is definitely the way to go, and that was my maybe longest running sort of Fudge setting that I've been playing. I've tried a few others like Gatecrasher, and been planning on maybe running something with now playing. I'm a bit of a Fudge collector, so I have most of these games. I also got Jacob's Psi-Punk, which I'm still looking forward to using it in a game. I haven't yet been running any Cyberpunk, but that's definitely what I'm gonna do.
Cool.
I found some cool rules there for something which I wanted to implement in another sci-fi setting, I think. But sorry, I currently forget which rule it was that sort of caught my attention. But yeah, I've been reading a lot of different Fudge games, and but yeah, currently I'm running also a homebrew Fudge build, basically.
Nice. Well, for me, it was kind of interesting because not only was Fudge new to me at the time that I found it, I had never really been into the whole IRC thing, and I am an extremely impatient person. I'm the guy standing in front of the microwave, going, "Come on, hurry up," So I found it real challenging, and my first exposure to Fudge was guys like Nate and Jonathan and Wolf running Fudge games via IRC, which is a chat protocol, text chat. And it's kind of interesting because it drove me bananas as a player, just because I was like waiting for my turn. But as a person learning a game system, it was great because I could go back and scroll through the text chat, the log,
Yeah.
and I could really break things down and kind of in my mind I could see things. It gave me a really nice overview of how Fudge really works, particularly the simultaneous actions concept, which I had not experienced in an RPG until I found Fudge, which is
that's
one of my favorite features by far.
Yeah, mine too. And that's one of the things that I sort of really enjoyed with the also IRC playing was that as a GM, I'm kind of I'm not good at planning, so I kind of fly by the seat of my pants.
Hey, me too.
And IRC, sorry.
No, I was just saying, so do I.
Yeah, and IRC is the perfect medium for this because I type in a challenge, and while the players are sort of digesting that, I'm already looking up necessary rules and already planning the sort of next move. And by the time all the players have responded, I have a new line to go out. And it's perfect for the GM or the non-planning GM who sort of, once the player throws a corkscrew at you, you can just sort of come up with something on the spot, which is not that on the spot. So you have a minute or two to plan out stuff as it sort of develops.
Well, that leads me into the next question, because the next question is, what is your favorite feature of Fudge? So we'll start with you, Jacob.
I don't honestly know how to pick one. The trait ladder is what made me like really fall in love with the game to begin with. But I also really love the dice because they're so tactile. Someone like me who's visually impaired can roll 4 dice and just touch the tops of them and know whether I've got a plus or a minus or a blank side without even having to look at them.
Yeah, cool. I haven't even thought of that feature, but yeah, you're right.
Yeah, I actually wrote a 3-part blog series about why Fudge is such a great game for accessibility purposes, because it has so many of the great features that they're good for people with cognitive impairments. That the math isn't very heavy. It's great for children because the math isn't very heavy.
Right.
The dice are so perfect. The trait ladder is so simple. You don't need to look things up very often because usually every Fudge game has like a 1 or 2 page character sheet that tells you everything you need to know about anything you can do. Because it's really all boils down to roll your 4 dice and add a number. And anything else, if you don't get it right, that's okay. The GM can help you or make it up on the fly.
Yeah.
And so I love the idea that you should just fudge it.
Right. How about you, Wolf?
Yeah, I have to say, just fudging it is my number 1 favorite feature of Fudge. I do love also the ladder, because the ladder is the key, basically, for me. It really sort of opens up the game in a sense that basically you can map a lot of things into the ladder, and combining that with just fudging it, it makes for a very sort of swift and smooth game. I still need to get more sort of focused and oriented when doing combats, but I kind of prefer to have as little combat as possible, in a way, and but basically just fudging it, and with the ladder, you can go so far with it. I'm actually using the ladder for a lot of things, like a lot of the Fudge hacks that are out there, like tracking money. I actually have a spell system where I'm tracking the power level with the Fudge ladder, and all of these sort of things combined, or these 2 things combined, is the killer feature for me.
Awesome. I used to say that, well, the dice for me is kind of a no-brainer because of the fact that it's a bell curve. It's a little more predictable, and for me, it's a little more believable. Like I said, when there's an obvious mismatch, then it gives that advantage mathematically where it belongs, and it's not just this completely random thing where your stats don't matter. As I started working on my game, I think what I discovered I like most is the ladder, for the simple reason that I'm trying to. My goal with my game that I'm making right now is obviously to appeal. There's a certain niche that I'm trying to appeal to, but what I'm really wanting to do with Fudge, and I don't know why. It feels like maybe there wasn't a bigger push when Fudge came out. It's such a great game for complete noobs, for people who've never played a role-playing game. I have 4 people out of 6 in my current face-to-face group that have either played no role-playing games or 20 years ago, 10 years ago, almost no exposure to it. Yeah. And they pick up on Fudge, like especially with the trait ladder. One of the things that drove me nuts about D&D, in particular, I love D&D. Been playing it since 1980, so I'm not bashing it. I've played every version except for 4th. Well, I've played a little bit of 4th. But there's a lot of metagaming involved because it's got so many stats, and there's so many. This feat requires this thing, and you got to have a minimum strength, and it's just very, very intricate. So it becomes very difficult to sort of role play when you're doing stuff. It seems to me, with the more mechanical a system is, the harder it is for players, particularly new players, to just role play. They start looking at their sheet and they're looking at their stats, and I get like a +1 bonus here, and I got a +2 for this, and if I combine, and now they're not role playing anymore. They're thinking more like a video game, where they're thinking analytically as a person controlling a character versus being the character. And one thing I found the latter particularly is conducive to is people just saying, when they go, hey, we need to get into this door. Anybody know how to pick a lock? Oh, I'm good. How are you? I'm fair. Well, you're better at it. So, without it, I'm a second-level thief with you know what I mean? You don't have to get into all that stuff. And like what Wolf said, too, is just being able to use it for more than one thing. For example, in Blood, Sweat, and Steel, I adopted the abstract fun system that I found on the old Fudge RPG site.
Yeah, that's the one I'm talking about.
That doesn't exist anymore, unfortunately. But it assigns relative value to liquid and solid and hard assets. So you can have a bag of coins which has a fair value. So anything less than a fair value, you can buy. If it's more than a fair value, you can. It eliminates a lot of the bookkeeping and accounting. I have thought about going with I was thinking about going with a ladder system for health and for stress. So you'd start at a certain level because it would be a trait, good or fair, whatever, and each time you took a wound, it could drop you in levels, and then when you hit abysmal, that means you're taken out. I've played around with it. Right now I'm going with a wound track, but I think overall, for me, it's the ladder. And although I know a lot of Fudge players that don't like the ladder, they like to. In fact, the guys that made Strands of Fate, I think, eliminated the adjectives altogether and just went with a numerical system, which is fine, and for a lot of people. But for reaching new players, it just makes sense to them. It's easy to grasp on. It's easy to know that legendary is better than abysmal, just because most people understand what those words mean. And you can apply it to a lot of different things. So I think that's my favorite feature.
Yeah.
So now that we've covered that, let's go to the opposite. What is your least favorite feature, Jacob, of Fudge?
I think we were just having this discussion on the Fudge Google Plus community.
Yeah, I think so too.
I think scale is the one thing of Fudge that I never really jived with, I guess. It's more mathy than the rest of the system. Yeah. And I actually eliminated it in Psi-Punk and just kind of went with my own size categories for vehicles, and then it helps that all of the characters are humans by default, so everybody doesn't need to have a scale necessarily.
Right.
I kind of wish there was a more elegant way to do it, but I haven't been able to think of one myself, and I haven't really seen a lot of different variants out there.
I have to, as I did in the Google Plus community, I have to defend the scale. I've used the scale in my.
I've got for mouse guard. It's great.
Yeah, it makes it possible to do mouse guard basically, and yeah, it's great for that.
So, what's your least favorite feature of Fudge, Wolf? It doesn't mean you're not gonna like it; just your least favorite.
No, yeah. What did I say? Oh, yeah. Experience is sort of. So I've been now running a campaign, and it's sort of simple enough, but sometimes it feels that it's a bit too simple to me. That okay, I basically, if I give more than like 3 or 4 experience points, I'm gonna have so souped up characters in no time that it's not gonna be fun to play because nothing will challenge them really. And that's sort of the thing that's sort of my issue with Fudge. But to come back a bit to the previous question, I do have to say that Fudge is the perfect system to run conventions with. In the
yes,
in that it can bring in new players. So I love playing in conventions, and I love setting that no experience required for anything even remotely related to role-playing. And I have taught quite a few people about RPGs and sort of gaming in general in these conventions just by running Fudge, and it's great for that.
Cool. Well, I'm going to have to side with Jacob on the scale, and it's a brilliant system, and it's mathematically sound. But the whole 1.5, and you've got a mass scale and a speed scale, and I found that really confusing as a new player to Fudge. But being that I'm running a sword and sorcery game, I've got oh, there's Sonia. There's my dire wolf.
You're right.
I've got a lot of different sized creatures and demons and wyverns and different types of things and giant snakes and all these things. So it's an elemental part of the game. But I stumbled one day. I was working with Nate, and we were trying to figure out a more elegant way to do it, and I just happened to be going through some D&D stuff, and I noticed that there are 9 size categories in the D&D size categories. There are 9 ladders, rungs on the ladder for Fudge. So if you put fair or medium size at fair and scale it up or down from diminutive, I think is their smallest, to beyond monstrous, I can't remember.
Find the colossal.
Colossal, right. It fit perfectly. So that gave me my scale, but I didn't want to use the D&D terms. I thought, and now we're getting back to the ladder. Hey, something's fair size, something's good size, something's terrible size. By using the ladder, it's not a perfect fit, and I didn't want to create a new adjective ladder, but I found that when people already know the ladder and they understand what fair is, what good is, what great, you don't need to change the words to apply to different things because it gives them a relative filing system in their head of what everything is to everything else. So if you know you're fair-sized, and I say that a demon pops out and he's great-sized, you know he is massively huge. And that's the other thing that I don't think gets talked about enough in Fudge, because so many people play games that are linear distribution versus a bell curve distribution. Like in D&D, a +1 is a 5% increase. If you give somebody a +1 bonus in D&D, it's a 5% improvement no matter what level they're at, no matter what their existing score was. A +1 basically just gives them 5%. That doesn't work that way in Fudge. In Fudge, a +1 bonus depends on where you're giving it. Going from fair to good, it's like, what is it, roughly a 22% increase in your chances, but at the higher scales, it's even bigger because like a legendary roll has a 1.2% chance of occurring. So when you add a +1, it not only is a much bigger bonus than in most games. It's equivalent to a 3.7 or something like that in D&D. One of my D&D players would give their wives for a +4 sword. So +1 bonus is a big deal in Fudge, but it also depends on where it comes in, because the difference is not from fair to good. it looks like a +1 on the ladder, but it's actually considerable. It's a big jump. It's not just a +1, and then going from +2 to +3 is an even bigger deal. So it's kind of hard to explain to people how the exponential nature of the ladder. But by tying it to it, at least it gives them a visual. And that's what I found with the size categories. If I say something is a poor size, they know it's really little. And ultimately, you know, you rarely run into things at the extreme ends of the scale, unless you're doing something super epic. Anyways, so you generally tend to fall within, you know, from maybe great to poor, as far as for size scales for me. But the scale thing I really struggled with, and I think part of it too is for me, I'm not a mathy type person, and where I don't want to do a lot of calculations. And scale does kind of introduce that element, and because I struggle with it as a player, I think I found it frustrating as a GM, just my initial experience with it.
So for me, for the scale, I kind of like your system actually, but it sort of does break the actual the thing that I like with the scale is that it actually is based in reality and in masses. So mass and height does not scale proportionally, and that's sort of what the scale system tries to capture. The fact that you get 2 times as high does not mean that you get 2 times as strong or 2 times as massive.
Sure.
No, you get like 8 times and that's sort of the thing that the scale thing does for me, at least for in Mouse Guard, because you have these teeny tiny mice which are scale 0.
Right.
And then if you give a fox in your system, maybe it would be a huge creature, so maybe a great-sized or superb-sized. But that would mean that basically 3 mice could take out a fox. No. A fox, my friend, is something like a +8 or 10.
Right.
And you need, at this point, you start needing an army of mice to take it out. And that's, for me at least, really nicely captures sort of the scale that we're playing. So for Mars God, for me, it's just perfect. But for a generic fantasy game, yeah, there could be a simpler way of doing this, and I really like the idea of sort of putting the scale on the ladder.
Yeah, I like I said, and it was funny how when I did it, it wasn't so much that I thought it was clever. I just didn't want to use the D&D terms in my game. So like, hey, I already got the ladder here. So, and like I said, it's not a perfect thing to say, oh, superb size. That doesn't really make sense if you just say that out loud. But in the context of how Fudge works, it does make sense. But you're right that the limitation of using the ladder is you do only have from +4 to -4.
Yeah, you sacrifice the granularity.
Yeah.
Yes. And that would go into, and there's a lot of variants out there. The Fudge Edges, I tried that system for a while, which basically gave you 24 level rungs on the ladder versus 9. That was the one that has the good plus, good 0, good minus. Do you remember that system? It was
really no.
I played around with it in the first version of Blood, Sweat, and Steel, and it's one of those things that looks great on paper.
At that point, you might as well use it D20, though.
Yeah, I think most people's brains would explode if they tried to sort of take in that ladder.
It was really clunky.
I expanded mine just a hair to get a little bit more granularity, but more than 11, I think you're kind of getting way out there with Fudge.
Well, and that was my problem with like percentile-based systems and things like. I mean, do I really need 100 levels from you suck to you rock?
Right.
For me, I'm just trying to tell a story. Did I hit the guy? Did I nick him? Did I really mess him up? I don't need to have, so many varying degrees of good to bad. I know for some games and some playing styles that works really well for people, but for my playing style, I like fast, I like quick resolution, I like the role playing to stay within the chase scenes and the fight scenes, and keep it to that sort of idea. And the ladder is so versatile that way.
Yeah,
it really does.
The ladder is nice in that you can sort of ingest the whole thing. I mean, so actually Stefan runs with a 7-rung ladder. So from nowadays from -3 to +4.
To +3, right?
No, to -2 to +4. He changed it. So he used to run from -3 to +3, but he's now actually, so he introduced very good between good and great, and then he didn't want to add one more. So he just adjusted. So basically, his ladder is the worst is at poor.
So that'd be the same as the original Fate ladder went from -2 to +4 or +6.
Yeah, this doesn't go to +6. It still goes only to it goes to +4.
+4.
You have a mediocre at -1. You have 0 for fair. You have good at +1. Very good at +2. Great at +3, and superb at +4.
Oh, okay.
So that's where it ends for him.
But that's just another example of how flexible Fudge is. I mean, I've seen like at least 5 different ladders in all the different games. I mean, a lot of them use the standard ladder, but I've seen a lot. Fate's had 2 or 3 different versions.
Yeah.
Before now the new Fate Core ladder, which is what they've been using since Dresden, I believe, or maybe even since Spirit of the Century. I think it was the same, I believe. Okay, so now we're talking about some other RPGs. So my next question for you guys is, what's your favorite Fudge RP? And if you want to pimp your own, that's cool. But I'm just kind of curious what your favorite is, or if there's some other ones that you've got your eye on, or have played around with or whatever. Jacob, we'll start with you.
I am sort of a Fudge connoisseur, so I've read a lot of different settings and tweaks. I do, of course, love Psi-Punk. I enjoy running it. I've also had my eye on Blood, Sweat, and Steel for a long time, and have been waiting for it to come out. I hear that maybe someday it'll be released.
Yeah, someday.
I also really like Marvelous Superheroes by Eddie Webb, and the sludge kind of variant of that. And Gatecrasher is good. And then even just the 5-point Fudge, Fantasy Fudge, that kind of really basic flavors are all just amazing. I don't know how to pick one.
Well, that's good.
Rose Wiles looks great. I wish Mike Conway could be here because I've been waiting for that to come out for a long time too.
Yeah, he's gonna run a game for my daughter and I, hopefully in the near future. Yeah,
Nice.
We got a router issue, so we'll have to get another panel together when he can join us for more detailed discussions, for sure. So how about you, Wolf? What's your favorite Fudge RPG?
So I'm like Jacob. I have all of them on PDF, and I have most of the Fudge games on print. So I was able to get Gatecrasher, which I really liked when I was reading it. I didn't like it as much when I was running it. Possibly due to my own fault, but it didn't really. The sort of backstory didn't really tick my sort of perfectly. But it was sort of. I did like it, as I said when I was reading it, but it might also be my players because they are sometimes difficult. They're all computer science engineers. So
keep playing sci-fi game with them.
Yeah.
There's nothing worse than running Cyberpunk for a bunch of computer hackers.
Yeah. And they basically, they didn't really embrace the setting as much as I had hoped, and it became a bit difficult. Currently, I'm running with them Fudge on the Fly, actually. Set in Lone Wolf's world of Magnamund, which I love as a setting. So now Fudge finally lets me play it as I see it should be played. I really like also Mech-Isis. I'm really looking forward to running it one day for a Robotech or a Macross setting, which I think it will be great for. And well, Psi-Punk, I have to say I liked reading it, so that's one of my also faves. I can't really pick one. If I have to pick one, I have to say Homebrew. Because let's say the 10th edition, the 10th anniversary edition is my favorite Fudge game because it contains so much good stuff in it, and I'm a tinkerer by nature in the sense of running games. So I will not take any game as is, as written. I will tinker with and combine stuff and change stuff.
Right. Well, mine is, well, I've got a couple. Obviously, I'm biased. Blood, Sweat, and Steel I love because it's coming out of my brain.
I love that too, by the way.
But there's a couple that I have had a chance to play around with. Hack and Slash, I really like. It's a simple system, kind of emulates the old school D&D sort of vibe, and it's a really easy game to play. We did it as a pickup game and played it. I also got to play a couple rounds of Mutant Bikers of the Atomic Wasteland, which I thought was kind of fun. It's free online. I'll be including links to that. I'm gonna stray from Fudge a little bit. I love the magic system in Dresden Files, which I know is Fate, and I'm a big fan of the original Fate that came out, the free Fate version before Spirit of the Century. In fact, I've got some Fate elements in Blood, Sweat, and Steel. Most namely combining gifts and faults into aspects. We call them qualities because they've got a few more tweaks than what they were in the original Fate system. But obviously I'm a big fantasy sword and sorcery fan, and I like those types of games. I haven't had a chance to play Gatecrasher, although I did pick it up a few years ago. I just haven't had a chance to play it. And there was another one I wanted to play. I was trying to find the was it Terra Incognita? I had downloaded that I wanted to check out. There's so many homebrews out there too. It's almost a little overwhelming when you really start digging in. But those are among my favorites. It's hard when you've been working on a game for 5 years. I've been spending a lot of time with it, and it's nice to get a break. I really enjoyed playing your mouse guard, the Fudge version, because I have a lot of interests, but I'm a narrowly focused gamer. Because I GM so much, when I do get a chance to game, I want to play basically a sword and sorcery or a medieval fantasy straight-up style game. That's my primary style of gaming. And so playing a little mouse was really weird for me at first. But it's so interesting to just completely look at the world with a different set of eyes. I found that really, really cool.
That's what drew me into it too. It was just the fact that crossing the road becomes an adventure, basically.
Right. Well, and one of my favorite games I used to play just out of high school was Shadowrun. So I will be giving Psi-Punk a try because I see some similarities there, and I would love to. And I got some friends. Two of my players in my face-to-face group are huge Cyberpunk fans, as far as just the genre, the modern. So we're actually having we're calling it Game-a-thon here, but it's basically going to be a grown-up pajama party this weekend. All my gamers are coming over at like 2 in the afternoon, and we're going to grill out and hang out in the hot tub and do all those kind of normal hangout things, but then we're going to game like crazy. I think we're planning on playing some Cards Against Humanity. I think we're going to play some Munchkin. I have the Conan Munchkin that I've been wanting to play, and we're going to play some Blood, Sweat, and Steel. It's basically just an excuse for a bunch of grown-ups to get together and be silly and try out many different types of cocktails and wines and have a good time. So, but yes, I am biased. I mean, obviously, when you make a game and you're putting your heart and soul into it, you're putting on paper the thing that you want to play. So it's impossible not to be biased. But I think that there's a lot of games I want to try, that's for sure. And I've really become, it's a hard sell to get me to look at a game that's not Fudge or Fate based at this point, because it's so easy to grab onto anybody's system and kind of get the gist of it once you know the underpinnings of it. And I find that really, really helpful in trying out different genres and different games, because they all kind of have the same chassis underneath with tweaks. So now that we're talking about our own creations, this is plug time. So we'll start with you, Jacob. Go ahead and plug your Fudge creations.
Well, like I said, Psi-Punk has been out since May of this year, and I am working on 2 additional supplements. One that's going to detail different mega corporations and criminal cartels and mafias, and then I'm working on sort of a micro setting. It's an arena set in the far south of South America, and the town surrounding it. And then my other one is Monster Kart Mayhem, which is more of like a sort of Fudge board game. It's a racing RPG, but there's a definite like starting point and ending point. It's designed to be more of a casual one-shot kind of board game. I'll actually be running it at a convention soon, and I'm going to be running it both in the RPG area of the convention and the board game area, and I'm going to try to see like which sort of person responds better to it, so I know how to bill it.
Right.
And so that's one of the other things, back to what I love about Fudge, is that it's so flexible, you can make a board game with it.
I love that.
Awesome.
I love that.
How about you, Wolf?
Well, I'm not a game designer, so the only thing I can really plug is other people's stuff. So I have to say, well, I mentioned Psi-Punk several times, but I have not expressed as much like of Blood, Sweat, and Steel as I should have, so sorry about that.
Sure.
I love Blood, Sweat, and Steel. It's I really like the sort of sword and sorcery genre. I really like how Blood, Sweat, and Steel does it. But I ran or played a game of Steel and Flame a few weeks ago by Brent Newhall, and although he's not a Fudge game designer, this one actually was using Fudge mechanics, and I really liked it. It was very, very simple, but also allowed me to focus on role-playing very much. I like that. The mouse guard setting I've talked about, so since no existing rules worked for me, I had to make my own Fudge thingy for it. Same for, I'm currently building for the World of Lone Wolf. I'm sort of building a Fudge build for that. Once I have, so I'm using now a Fudge on the fly because my players, they responded well to that. So I was doing a one-off, and they really liked the fact that they don't need to have a clear concept of their character when we started playing, that
Right.
they can sort of build their character while we're playing. But I'm applying my sort of fantasy rules to it, and I'm also sort of in the background. I had my own system, as I said. I'm sort of fudgifying it and building it out. So it was a generic system, which I had then sort of these add-on modules for different genres. So I had a modern add-on to it. I had a fantasy one and a sci-fi, and I'm now sort of building a generic Fudge with then these add-ons. But it's going to take a while to get out and to write. But basically, every time I'm gaming, I'm experimenting something that I thought of as a sort of hack or tweak to add to this system. And once I'm done, I hope to publish it somehow, maybe.
Awesome. Well, speaking of publishing, the thing that kind of really lit a fire under me was discovering John For's Gamer Lifestyle Project, which I'm going to be pimping pretty heavily because it has changed my life. And I failed to get my 30-day boot camp done in time. I'm still working on it. But just the process, the intense level of detail they go into. I mean, it's literally day one you do this, day two you do that.
Step-by-step process.
It's so easy, and it gets you into everything from setting up your drive-through account to establishing a WordPress page and all these different things, and the networking and the social networking and all those aspects of it, and writing skills, editing. He drops in articles and suggestions and how to get it. It's amazing. And I feel really, really lucky to have gotten in on it when I did, because I was kind of at the point where I was getting so frustrated with Blood, Sweat, and Steel that I wasn't going to abandon it, but the idea of I almost gave up on the idea of it being a commercial product. And with all the time I got spent with it, I've invested almost $1,000 in for artwork for it, for a game that doesn't exist yet. It would be nice to recoup some of that. Plus, I mean, this is something I have a real passion for. I started gaming in around 1980, and I grew up in a town that was 20 minutes from Lake Geneva, so I was able to go to the very early Gen Cons. I met Gary a few times. I actually attended his funeral. That was a very, very special thing for me, because he was a big influence on me as a kid growing up. So I didn't want to give up on that dream, and finding the Gamer Lifestyle project, it just ignited a fire, and that's why I've been getting this Fudged publishing going, and I'm trying to get more active, and I want to promote other people's stuff too. I don't want to just be all about what I'm doing, because I feel like Fate is awesome. I love it. I've played a lot of Fate games, but the popularity of Fate has sort of diminished Fudge into a little sort of corner of the gaming world, and I think that both of them are unique enough systems that they accommodate what they do very, very well. And I like the new storyteller, player narrative games. They're kind of cool, but I'm also an old school guy who's been playing for 30 years, and I do also like that very conventional GM paints the scene and players react to their environment versus this whole, I'm just going to declare that this thing exists, and I'm going to, there's different play styles, and I think they're both awesome. I would just like to see, I don't want to see Fudge become forgotten due to lack of support, lack of whatever. So I've kind of made it a mission to find guys like you, people like you, I should say, that like Fudge, that still use it, that are finding innovative ways to use Fudge and incorporate some of the new stuff. I mean, my game uses aspects essentially instead of gifts and faults. I love the dual nature of it, of a trait that could be both good and bad at the same time. I found that really fascinating. I think that's probably, to me, the greatest evolutionary step that Fudge took when it went to Fate. That was, to me, the big thing that really made it different, was creating this trait that when you use it is good, but when your GM uses it can sort of create obstacles for your player. And the fact that it could be just any kind of slogan or statement or whatever, descriptive sentence or question. I've had aspects that are questions too, like, what am I doing here? That used to be an aspect I used to use a lot.
That works.
But obviously, Blood, Sweat, and Steel is my baby. It's what I'm trying to get finished. But I also have been tinkering with, my daughter wanted to create a RPG, or she wanted something that was a little more for a kid's level, and I started tinkering around with this idea of it's sort of based around nightmares and dreams. So the character you play is as a magical creature that can actually enter people's dreams or nightmares or whatever. And so if you're playing sort of a good creature, you would go into the nightmares and you'd fight the battles and you'd help the person overcome whatever the thing is in their nightmare. Conversely, you could be the nightmare creator, so you're going into people's dreams and you're trying to sort of disrupt things or whatever. And it was sort of taking a different approach for me, which is not your typical fighter, magic user, or whatever type of just person in a game, where you're actually playing a magical being, and you're not even playing in a physical space. You're entering people's dreams and living in that world. So every encounter is a different world, because whatever their dream is. And I haven't fleshed all that out yet. I'm still playing with it. And I know there's a couple.
Did you solve already the problem of, can you enter a dream in a dream?
A Dream in a Dream? I haven't got that far yet. That would be the adult version, I think. There's too many levels to be confusing for a kid's game. I did make a real basic kid's game. We just called it Monster Hunter. And it was basically sort of like a Fudge version of the D&D Encounters game, which was like basically their miniatures war game version of D&D. It's just using very, very simple rules. And it's just hunting down creatures. It's a dungeon crawl style thing, but almost no plot. It's just basically here's your dungeon, here's your guy, go in and find the creature, destroy it, take its stuff. It's a great way to introduce kids into role-playing games because you're not having to worry about backstories and subplots and this guy's trying to get over that person and what. It's just you're good guys. Here's your party. There's a monster. You got to go kill it in the cave. It's very focused. But my plan is to create a lot of Fudge-based games, but I'm trying to learn things in a certain order, and I'm trying to kind of slow my process down a little bit because I really want to push more towards quality over quantity because it's so easy to write up a Fudge game. I mean, you could do it on the fly.
Yes.
We did a zombie APOC game when we first started watching Walking Dead, and we whipped up a Fudge game in, I don't know, 20 minutes. With all the rules, attributes, skills, whatever, and go.
I once ran a purely 100% random Fudge game. So we used randomizers for everything. We generated random setting. We generated random character names. We created random characters. So what their sort of speciality would be. We used the randomizers in 7th Sanctum, and just everything was pure random, and then the players could combine them. But this actually tells how flexible Fudge is because we were able to do this. We could do it, and it ended up as a great game and actually a cool setting, which we call then Sky Pirates of Doom World.
Nice.
And yeah, I mean, it took us literally half an hour to roll up this random stuff. Then I took a half-hour break to plan it, and then we started running. It was just awesome.
Nice.
That's awesome.
Well, cool. Well, we've hit about at the one. We're pretty close to an hour here. So, and I got through all the questions, and everything worked out pretty well. I will be putting tons of links on this actual video. So if anybody's watching it live, I'll be adding notes, but I'm actually making a video. I created a YouTube channel. I'm gonna try to promote the heck out of it, and my ultimate goal is to get you guys in here one-on-one too, so we can go more into detail about gaming styles, things you like, and really kind of dig deeper, because Fudge to me is a deceptive system because it looks very basic, but there are add-ons and rules like Wolf, the first version of Blood, Sweat, and Steel that I made, we had weapon sizes, we had weapon speeds, I had weapon types, piercing, slashing, bludgeoning, and all this stuff, and it was like every piece of equipment had a stat, and all the you could make basically a Fudge version of Rollmaster if you wanted to easily.
Yes.
And so I think it's very deceptive when people, it's got attributes and Fudge dice and you got some skills, and there's a lot more. You can do so much with it, and I think that's the thing that also gets kind of missed. I mean, if you look at Fate was Fudge with a few twerks at first. Tweaks. I said twerks. But it was basically Fudge with a few differences, and then it became Fate with a few more differences when Spirit of the Century came out. And you see the evolution of that game over time. Is pretty amazing. So I think that's one of the things I want to promote too, is just how flexible the game really is. And it was the 10th anniversary book that really woke me up to what you can do with it, because they've got rules for sci-fi, they've got rules for weapons, and they've got rules for kung fu and martial arts systems, and they've got
I just started playing with those.
Yeah, that's another game I would love to make, is a cheesy Hong Kong B-movie martial arts, action game.
Yeah, I'm actually sort of planning to do either with Fate or Fudge, but Kung Fu Panda.
Nice.
There was this Pilgrims of dough or something like this that I might be using for it, or then I'll just go with Fudge. I might borrow some elements from Pilgrims, but essentially Fudgeify it a bit.
Awesome.
But yeah, I mean, with Fudge, it's just amazing. I mean, my own system, I could have converted it directly, just take out the die roll mechanics, replace it with Fudge, and call it done.
Right.
But there are so many things in Fudge that I like that sort of take out all kinds of tracking, because my system had everything from tracking wound hit locations, and you would have hit points in different areas of the body and so on, and all that. I kind of like the way Fudge abstracts it very well. Other than just you have a number of hit points, when they run out, you die. Before that, you have no penalties. I like the sort of death spiral in Fudge.
Yeah, I've always seen the death spiral as a feature and not a bug because, well, I was talking with Jacob earlier. The only real world experience I have to equate to combat was as an amateur kickboxer, and I can tell you firsthand that after you take 20 or 30 shots to the ribs, you're not throwing as heavy a kicks. You're not, because when you get hurt, it's harder to move. It's harder to function. So I see that as a definite advantage. Some systems, if you're doing high fantasy, epic, hero stuff, sort of like godlike sort of guys, well, I think it would kind of diminish that. But if you're doing for something gritty and sort of believable and something kind of dark and dangerous, it seems like a great way to go. And it fits the sword and sorcery genre. I say sword and sorcery, and there's so many different variations. Some people think it is sort of over the top and crazy heroic because they're used to stories of Conan, chopping through, 30 or 40 picks in a minute. But that's Conan, and I think sometimes it's important to differentiate between the fiction of a genre and actually a playable game within the genre. Not everybody's Conan. The rest of the world is dark and scary, and you can die from a single stab wound in an alley because you stole someone's lotus flower. So there's a difference between, you still want to be able to play a Conan-like character if that's the genre you're going for, but you're more going to play more believable, lower kind of, I call them squishy characters that have to be a little more careful. They can't just dive into a horde of 30 picks and fight
exactly.
them.
One of my players is deathly afraid of a -1 penalty. This was because one of his characters who wasn't, he was a beginning character, so he wasn't. He was quite low level. I think his greatest skill was great, and so he was a rather lower level. And then he didn't really realize that how much of a beginner he was, and then he got a wound, and he now feels that if he ever gets a -1 penalty, it's huge. No, and he goes to great lengths to avoid even a -1 penalty. And so that tells of the power of a plus or a -1.
Yeah, it does.
Well, and my future panel discussions too, what I'd like to do is pick a topic and just really dig into it, like simultaneous combat versus alternating rounds combat, or magic systems within Fudge, or even just basic things like using attributes, and have sort of. And maybe they won't be an hour long, but although you could easily, do that. And then the other thing I want to do on this particular page is I want to start running some play tests with all the different games that everybody that I communicate with plays. So we would highlight a particular person's game. So one week we would play Jacob's, and I would approach it like a con game. Keep it simple, pre-generated characters, and we'll do an actual play session on here and on the YouTube channel. So people they're talking about these Fudge games, or what do they play like? Well, they can just go right to that. Well, here's these guys playing Mouse Guard, or here's these guys playing Blood, Sweat, and Steel, or here's these guys playing Psi-Punk, or whatever game, or even I think a fun thing to do sometime too would be to get us all together and make a game, make a Fudge game.
That would be awesome.
It just kind of by committee kind of a thing, and create a kind of like what Wolf was, not so much random, but like show the actual process of a group of people getting together and go, okay, what rules do we want to use, what attributes, what skills, that we're going to use a wound track, and build a game live, and sort of show the process. So
sounds good.
I'm going to wrap it up because I've taken up you guys' over an hour. So. And I'm planning on doing a lot more of these. This is the first one, and some of it will be edited, and I'll make sure to include lots of links. I've got everybody's links, and I'll be sure to be promoting this on my 54 gaming communities that I belong to on G+. So I recently posed it. Like, is that a lot? It seems like a lot of communities to belong to.
I've got maybe 30 some odd.
Yeah.
I only check 4 of them regularly.
Yeah. There's some that I don't go to all the time because they're not that active. I'll wait till they have 10 or 15, notifications, and then I'll go check it out. It'd be kind of neat. I know they kind of do that, but if G+ had a sorting feature where you could, instead of it sorts them by your last visited, but it'd be cool if they would sort them by the number of new posts.
That would be great.
That way, all the things because when you have 50, obviously. Probably most people don't have that many communities, but when you do have a lot, it's a lot to scroll through. So it'd be kind of nice if all the ones that are the busiest would always kind of be at the front, because those are the ones you'd typically be checking out more often anyways. And then as you clear them out, they would be back to 0, and then the guys that only have 10 or 12 would come to the front of the list the next time you go check it out. It would help me get through more community, because I like to be active and I like to participate, especially if you have something to actually contribute or something to plug shamelessly. That's kind of the plan with this, and I want to, like I said, I'll be getting a hold of you guys to talk about doing some single, like, one-shot adventures of your games to demo them, and like I said, I'd like to do some panel discussions where we just talk about one particular piece or component and really dive into it, and because I think that'll really help show people the flexibility of Fudge. What you can do is just a simple thing like attributes, and so I use attributes this way, or I use them this way, or you can also use them like this, and just show the different things you can do with it. Yeah. So I want to thank you guys for jumping in. Next time we'll try to get Mike involved. He's been doing a lot of play testing with me, so I like having his input and everything. So I'm going to sign off for this. Again, thank you guys. I'll be big sure. I'm going to put all the links to all you guys' games and your websites, and I'm going to try to cross-promote it as much as I possibly can, and we're going to have a Fudge renaissance one way or the other. So the revolt has begun. The resistance is growing.
Final words, just fudge it.
Just fudge it. And that's why I came up with the name for the publishing, Fudged Publishing, because it sounds like something else I'd say a lot that I probably won't say on here, just so I don't have to beep it out later. But the little slogan I actually had, because I want to promote other people's games, whether or not they want to do it through Fudged or whatever on drive-through, but I do want to promote them. And the little tagline I had come up with is, gaming on a budget, Fudge it. Because once you have the core rules, you can do anything you want. And I think when more people discover Fudge, because a lot of people are doing stuff with Fate, and Fate is great, but if you're going for a different style of game, I think Fudge is still really viable. And if people have those core mechanics in place, they can kick out stuff. I mean, we need more content creators. That's what really makes Fate what it is those guys were just so aggressive and so good at getting the word out and spreading the love of they were just they're everywhere, and even now with Fate Core, I mean, you look at their Kickstarter, it's mind-boggling.
Every day there's a new Fate Core Kickstarter. It
was like over $180,000 or something like that. I mean, it's crazy. And they went into. I know Fred did a really good job of explaining how that kind of broke down. It's not like they're retired in the Bahamas now. But $180 in a Kickstarter is way better than $1,000, no matter how you cut it. So it was the game is super popular, and I love Fate, and I'm going to pump Fate games too. But I'm really, really interested in helping to keep Fudge, the grandfather of Fate, alive and well as long as we can, and kind of get it out there. So I thank you guys for helping me do that. Jacob, any last words you want to throw in here?
Just thanks for having us. I think it's great that you're putting this all together, and I look forward to being able to participate more.
Awesome, and I will definitely. I had to take a break on the play testing with Blood, Sweat, and Steel, but I'm getting back into that. I know that I've got at least 2 other players, so
nice.
I'll keep you posted on that. And anytime you guys can jump in, you're more than welcome. I'd love to have you. So with that, I'm gonna say thanks to anybody who actually watched the video, and hopefully get a lot more people. And I'll see you guys soon.
All right.
All right. Talk to you later.
Great.
Bye.
Thanks.